is Notsam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
There's this terrific, I guess it's a docu-series technically, because it's a 10-part documentary on the 97-98 Chicago Bulls season. It's called The Last Dance. Whether you're a basketball fan or not, you'll love this. It's just a great story. And, Michael Jordan's all over it. And it's brought up the question, who is the Michael Jordan of wrestling? And I thought about it a lot. And at first, you're just like, okay, Michael Jordan, greatest of all time. I guess Hulk Hogan. Michael Jordan is like the Babe Ruth of basketball. Babe Ruth, Michael Jordan, Hulk Hogan, I think, right? But I really started to think about this. And this was after watching the documentary. And what's important to me in the documentary is this is not a guy who, Michael Jordan, got to where he got due to just simply physical gifts, right? That's part of it. Of course, some of it's God-given. But the reason that he was not just very good, the reason he was the greatest of all time was because he worked and he busted his ass. And the one thing that comes through in the doc is that he was always obsessed with being the best. From the time he got there, his only goal was to be the best to ever do it. And there's only a few people, everybody wants to be the best that ever do it. But there's only a few people that will actually put the work in and really make it their goal to be the best to ever do something that they're doing. And I think that is a key component to when factoring in the Michael Jordan of other professions. It's got to be somebody who came in with a singular goal of, I'm going to be the best of all time. Somebody who is naturally gifted, but not somebody who at first on their debut, Michael Jordan was drafted third, right? So it would have to be somebody, if we're talking about WWE, somebody who wasn't necessarily pegged as, oh yeah, he's going to be the greatest of all time. You know what I mean? He's champion right away. And somebody that has to work for it, right? It's not just enough that they did work for it, it's that they had to work for it. And it's somebody who's obsessed with winning and doing well every single time they go out there. Jordan played every single game like it was a championship game. And that's when I got to thinking, okay, who is that really? And it's somebody who can do it over time. Jordan's got 6 rings. You know what I'm saying? So for me, Steve Austin could be a candidate in the sense that he wasn't pegged to be the best of all time. He worked his balls off and became that way. However, I think because Steve Austin only lasted the amount of time that he lasted as the best, and it took him so long to get there, that he doesn't factor in exactly with the Michael Jordan of wrestling. The Rock, to me, is a little more LeBron James. He also has the same thing with Austin in the sense that his run wasn't quite long enough on top to be considered a Michael Jordan. But also, not that The Rock didn't work. We all know the $6 story. But The Rock was pegged to be a star from the beginning. Whether it worked or not, Rocky Maivia was supposed to be a star. And a lot of it was God-given. You could say John Cena. You could. I don't think John Cena quite. I think the difference with John Cena is that while he is in the conversation of the best of all time, I just don't see him as Jordan. Jordan had a style about him. There was a style about Jordan that even a non-basketball fan would look at and go, oh my God, what's that? That to me is what's missing with John Cena. To me, the only real answer and the only choice, you could say Ric Flair, and that's a debate you could have, but I don't know that Ric Flair, I don't know if it's the fact that he didn't win enough, because really in wrestling, wins and losses don't matter so much. Ric Flair just had great match after great match, but First of all, you couldn't call him the Michael Jordan of the WWE for sure, because so much of what he did was outside of the WWE. So maybe if you opened this wrestling wide, you could have a bigger conversation. But if we're just talking about WWE, it's certainly not Ric Flair, because he didn't do that work in WWE. So with all of that taken into account for, and I would love for you guys to tweet. I'd love for you guys to write in comments. You can email notsamwrestling@gmail.com. However you want to communicate with me. But tell me what you think of this. Because in my mind, the only answer for who is the Michael Jordan of wrestling, you can even leave it in the comments on YouTube, is Shawn Michaels. To me, Shawn Michaels is the Michael Jordan of wrestling. He checks all the boxes. You're talking about a guy whose greatness could last over the course of years. You're talking about a guy who was always good, but never pegged to be the best of all time. You're talking about a guy obsessed with becoming the best of all time. You're talking about a guy who every night would go out there and try to steal the show and try to have the match of the night and try to deliver the same quality of match as if it were WrestleMania. You're talking about a guy who did it with that style, that certain je ne sais quoi that Michael Jordan did it with. And a guy who, when you look back at his career, you could say, yeah, that might be the best guy to ever do it. Yeah, I know those conversations were happening while he was still playing. But when you look back at the entire career, it becomes much more difficult. And I'll never forget an interview that I did with Shawn Michaels that just made me rethink everything when he was talking about, I mean, he did end up returning for a match, but we don't really talk about that match. He was talking about why he didn't return and how he looked at his career and how it was all one story and that he thought on that level. And that's the level of thinking that you need to think on if you're the Michael Jordan of professional wrestling. To me, there's no question. Shawn Michaels is the Michael Jordan of professional wrestling. I'd love to hear your opinions. Tell me I'm wrong, but I doubt you can prove me wrong. I doubt you could say Shawn Michaels is not.